In this video, I am going to talk about the table of contents covered in the training Malware Reverse Engineering Basic to Advanced with Detection Engineering. This is the most comprehensive Windows malware analysis course covering basic malware analysis, reverse engineering, and detection engineering with malware development. Module 1 is the introductory module, which talks about the malware attack lifecycle. Here you are going to learn about the lab setup, where it is also covered about setting up honey traps for analyzing malwares in the lab environment. This module would be useful for setting up the lab, which is required for the entire training. Module 2 covers P file format. It talks about how P files are created. It talks about different kind of P files. It also covers various fields in P file like imports, exports, entry point. It also talks about how P file is executed and how it is mapped to virtual memory when executed. The knowledge gained from this module would help you in analyzing packers, API hooks, and code injections. Module 3 covers basic Windows internals. It gives a basic overview of Windows operating system, like the common processes and directories in Windows OS. It talks about the process attributes like path of the attributes, PEB, memory threads, which would be useful in analyzing malwares. It also talks about Windows registry, WoW64, Windows security architecture, and the knowledge gained from this module would be helpful in carrying out basic malware analysis. In some of the later modules, we talk about Windows internals in much more depth. Module 4 covers basic malware analysis. It talks about static analysis, dynamic analysis. It teaches you to use tools like Procmon, Process Hacker, and also teaches you some of the malware analysis techniques, which includes API logging and memory dumping. The knowledge gained from this module would be helpful for those who are completely new to malware analysis. It talks about some of the unique techniques used in malware analysis like API logging and memory dumping, which are often missed by malware analysts. Module 5 is the tools manual module, and this module teaches you how to start using the reverse engineering tools like OLI debugger, Gitra, x64 debugger, IDA, and WinDBG. It gets you familiar with the basic user interface of all the mentioned tools. It teaches you how to add plugins to the tools, and this module is a single point of reference while using tools whenever you are using tools in the later modules. This module would be useful for somebody who does not have any exposure to the reverse engineering tools like OLI debugger, x64 debugger, Gitra, IDA, and WinDBG. Module 6 is the module that covers assembly instructions. It starts with the basic x86 architecture. It teaches you about various types of x86 instruction. It talks about function calls, uh, about the storage of variables, function stacks, calling convention. Also, this module has special labs and samples to teach assembly language, and it would be helpful for those who are completely new to assembly language. So this module guarantees you to teach assembly language, more specifically x86 assembly language from the scratch. Module 7 teaches you to read disassembly in binaries. It teaches you to identify data types in disassembly. It teaches you to identify function loops in disassembly. It will teach you to identify complex data structure like array structure and linked list in disassembly. And in this module, you will learn to read disassembly, and it would be useful almost in every module. And especially it would be useful in reverse engineering algorithms in malwares. Module 8 covers another part of Windows internals. Here, I talk about the internals of Windows APIs like syscall, and also I talk about how to correlate the APIs to identify certain techniques. And this module would be useful while you debug API calls. Module 9 also covers Windows internals, but here I talk about the common sequences seen in malwares irrespective of they are ransomware or US malwares or they belong to any other malware family. Here you are going to learn some techniques to decipher complex API parameters like the structures passed as parameters to APIs. Here you will again learn to correlate APIs to identify certain techniques. And if you go through this module and remember the API sequences taught here, then it is going to speed up your reverse engineering process. Module 10 also talks about Windows internals, but here I talk about reverse engineering binaries, which are not EXEs. So here I talk about debugging DLLs, COMs, and debugging Windows services, and it can be used for debugging malwares which are non-executables, non-EXEs. Module 11 talks about cryptography in malwares. It will teach you to how to identify cryptography in malwares. It starts with the cryptography basics. It talks about pinpointing the cryptographic algorithms and analyzing them in malware binaries. It talks about the Windows 32 crypto APIs like Crypt Encrypt, and whatever you learn in this module would be useful in later modules, and the crypto APIs which you are going to learn in this module would be used in reverse engineering the real ransomware, which is covered in module 24. Module 12 covers about compilers seen in malwares. It talks about the concept of compiler stub, which is inserted by the compiler into the compiled binaries. It teaches you to identify WinMain in C++ programs. Also, it teaches you to identify main in C++ programs which are compiled with not so known or well-known compilers. And the knowledge gained from the module would be used in unpacking module, which is module 14. It also helps in speeding up reverse engineering. And also this module would be useful while writing static signatures. Module 13 talks about networking in malwares. It talks about some of the basic network APIs used in malwares like HTONs, NTONs. It teaches you how to locate and identify CNC traffic. It will teach you to analyze some of the algorithms like DG algorithm used to bypass intrusion detection system. Also, it covers analyzing the code related to lateral movement in malwares. And this module would be useful and applicable to all kind of malwares today which use network communication. Module 14 talks about packers and unpacking. It starts with the very basics where we talk about the packing process. Then we understand the various APIs involved during the unpacking. You will also learn to unpack custom packed malwares other than the malwares packed with known packers like UPX. You will learn some of the undocumented tricks to debug packed binaries, and you will also learn how to develop your own unpacking technique. And this module would be useful almost dealing with all kind of malwares you see today. Module 15 talks about code injection. It starts with the fundamentals. It talks about the various APIs involved in code injection. It will not only teach about debugging the injector, but also it will teach about debugging the injected code, which has the actual payload. Some of the common techniques I have covered in this is shellcode injection, memory maps, and thread hijacking. It also covers debugging of process following. Also, you are going to learn some undocumented tricks to debug code injection. And this module would be helpful in analyzing malwares using code injection and API hooking. The next modules talk about API hooking. Here, the module starts with the basics of API hooks. It will explain about inline hooks, IIT hooks. It will teach you how to debug API hooks in the debugger. It will teach you how to debug the malwares which use the web injects technique. And again, you learn some undocumented tricks to debug API hooks. So if you understand this module, you can debug some complex malwares, and the knowledge gained from this module would also be useful in the later modules like the rootkit module, which is module 17 and module 18. Module 17 and 18 covers rootkit, which includes user modes and kernel mode rootkits. You will learn some of the techniques like process hiding and file hiding, which is implemented in rootkits. You will learn both about user and kernel mode rootkits. You will learn to debug Windows kernel drivers with WinDBG. And this module would be helpful in analyzing complex malwares which might involve a kernel mode driver. Module 19, 20, and 21 would cover malware binaries which are not compiled in C++ or C compilers. It includes reverse engineering of .NET, VB, and Golang malwares. You will learn to use tools like DNSpy to unpack and deobfuscate .NET malwares. So this malware would be helpful in analyzing .NET malwares, VB malwares, and Golang malwares, which are increasing nowadays. Module 22 talks about anti-analysis and evasion techniques seen in malwares. It teaches you to identify, analyzing, and analyze anti-VM, anti-debug, anti-sandbox tricks in malwares. It will also talk about EDR evasion and AB bypass techniques. It will also teach you about some of the privilege escalation techniques like UAC bypass and token impersonation. And if you learn this module, you would be able to identify, locate, and analyze complex anti-analysis techniques in malware and patch them to bypass the malware techniques. Module 23 talks about advanced techniques in malwares, which includes identifying keylogger code, screenshot code. It talks about how to identify various pieces of ransomware code. It talks about code related to Viper, ATM malwares, and it helps you to identify, locate, and analyze advanced techniques seen in malwares at code level. Module 24, which is payload reverse engineering, has some case studies of some of the specific malwares, which include real ransomware. Here you are going to learn tricks to debug point of sales malwares. You are going to learn about debugging remote access trojans, stealers, and here you are going to learn about reverse engineering complex malwares in shorter time. Module 25 talks about reverse engineering malicious documents and scripts. Here you are going to learn about reverse engineering document malwares, RTF malwares. You are going to learn about analyzing JavaScript, PowerShell malwares. You will learn to deobfuscate macros, JavaScripts. You learn some of the techniques like template injection, XLM macros, and this module would be useful in reverse engineering doc, XLS, and some other kinds of malware, which are usually used as the initial attack vector. Now, the last section of the training includes detection engineering, reverse engineering, automation, and malware development. Module 26 covers building blocks of malware detection. Here we are going to talk about the various components of antiviruses, EDRs, and sandboxes, and also learn how to do some basic coding of some of these components. Here, I have shared some basic codes for ETW, memory scanning, and some other technologies. We'll also learn about static and behavior detection. You'll learn about signature optimization and false positive reduction. This would be useful for those who want to work in development of engines and signatures of anti-malware technologies like antiviruses, EDRs, and sandboxes. The module would also be helpful in understanding the EDR and antivirus evasion techniques seen in malwares. Module 27 talks about automatic reverse engineering. So here you are going to learn about automating some of the tools like Gitra and x64 debugger. So this module is going to teach you how to automate reverse engineering tools and speed up your reverse engineering task. Module 28 talks about reverse engineering best practices. It will teach you how to approach a reverse engineering problem. It will teach you how to accelerate the process of reverse engineering, like how to read the decompiler properly and how to speed up your decompiling process. It also teaches you to deal with the diversity. It will teach you how to work with very, very large samples. So overall, this module teaches you to effectively reverse engineer and speed up your reverse engineering task. Overall, it summarizes the malware analysis and reverse engineering process. The last module, which is module 29, talks about malware development at the basic level. In the last module, malware development basic level, we are going to learn about the tools which are required for malware development. You will learn about setting of compilers, which can be very much useful while compiling malwares. You will learn how to code malicious executables and document. You will learn about coding a basic C2 server, embedding some of the anti-techniques in them, embedding inline assembly in them. And this module gives you a basic insight on malware development and would be especially useful for those who are interested in red teaming or purple teaming. Overall, the training covers almost 100 plus Windows APIs and 50 plus techniques covered in malwares. And here are some of the testimonials from the students who took up my training. Thank you.